So not so long ago, I stayed up until 4 a.m. just because I was anxious to check out Jump Festa. Given how there was a slot scheduled for a Storm 4 discussion, I was pretty hyped, waiting for something new to be announced, but then nothing happened. All they did was remind us of the Momoshiki expansion pack, and they had like free battle matches, and that was it. Pretty underwhelming to say the least, especially since the other three games seem to have new stuff to offer. So right now, Bandai Namco hasn't revealed any news for a potential new Naruto game, and the only games that are regularly receiving new DLCs are two gacha games and Shinobi Striker. Meanwhile, one of their highest sold fighting games remains uneventful and struggling to maintain its longevity. But you know what? Fuck it. I don't want to wallow in negativity any further. Instead, I'm gonna share my thoughts on something about Storm 4 that I like, which is the music. Now, in my review of that game, I don't think I ever got to talk about the music, and I think it's because at the time, it didn't leave a strong enough impression on me that I felt the need to gush about it. And in retrospect, this somewhat remains true on some level. I honestly can't name that many boss battle themes that wowed me the same way Storm 3 and especially Storm 2 did. Nevertheless, there are things to appreciate about the music, and where I want to focus today is in the story mode menu. Now, Storm 4 starts off with us, the players, experiencing the iconic battle between Madara and Hashirama, which is interesting because it's the second time we start off a story mode of a Storm game with a fight that takes place long before the events occurring in the present. In Storm 3, we start off with the attack of the Ninetales, and what's interesting about this is that there are actual thematical reasons for these flashback openings. I won't go too deep because I don't want this to be a narrative analysis, but just to be brief, Storm 3 is largely a story about a hero, Minato representing the past heroic figure of Konoha, with the defense against the Ninetales being his most celebrated deed. In Storm 4, on the other hand, I would say that the main underlying theme is Naruto vs Sasuke. It can be seen even in the logo of the game, featuring both characters fisting, and the line Storm 4 has the flames of the Ninetales and electro shockwaves shielding the letters. While other titles would usually have logos themed after Naruto exclusively, Revolution being the weird exception, and with how the story mode is occasionally split into yin and yang, each of them focusing on either Naruto or Sasuke separately. The reason why it's important to start off with Hashirama and Madara fighting is because there are a lot of parallels drawn between them, and Naruto and Sasuke's eventual confrontation was a continuation of the Indra and Ashura destiny chain, later turning out to be the end of it, which also represented the end of the series. I bring all of this up because the story mode has this thing where the missions are categorized between different sections, all of them playing the same theme but with different instrumentalization, though still in sync of course. Now, in my review of the Storm trilogy, I brought up how the musical style had evolved since the PS2 era, and Storm 4 was also kind of different from the previous 5 games, although more subtly. It seemed like they relied more on what I assume is the shakuhachi instrument, not to say that they had never used it before because they definitely did, but it felt more present in this game. Aside from that, the music also had a marching vibe which fits really well with how the story centered on war. Now, the very first section is called Creation. It only features Hashirama vs Madara. The music playing here is pretty simple, though very warlike, pretty much embodying a start of a song. The second section is called Two Unparalleled Warriors, featuring more instruments and sharing a lot of the same traits unique to Storm 4 that I described earlier. As you advance the story, each section has more and more instruments present in it until you get to the very last one called New Life, which, much like how the first one was dedicated to Madara and Hashirama's fight, this one is dedicated to Naruto and Sasuke's last battle. And what I find to be interesting about the music is that it doesn't have any of Storm 4's musical uniqueness. Instead, we hear a rendition of the song that's about as simple as the one present in Creation, but instead only featuring violin and piano. Now, this alone is fascinating enough, but where you really start to find appreciation is when you go back and listen to the install theme of Storm 1, because they sound pretty identical. In a way, this confrontation marks the end of the story, the end of even the Ultimate Ninja Storm series, and with that said, we hear something that resembles literally the first ever sound that we have ever heard from Storm 1, the game that kickstarted all of this. This can even be observed in the music present in the actual boss battles themselves. The first match has a theme that resembles the regular tone of Storm 4, but in the second match, we hear a much more mellow song that, according to some people's observations, it's a mix of several Naruto vs Sasuke themes. I've heard this song a couple of times, and while I haven't picked up on all of them, there are times when it resembles Crimson Spiral and Black Thunder, a little bit of acquaintance from a long time ago, and of course has the classic jingle from Ultimate Ninja 3. It's even more impactful when you experience the battle that very much reflects this sort of homage to their history, where we see flashback brawls taking us back to the previous boss battles up until the very first Valley of the End fight. It's pretty sick actually. Now, I've recently been seeing people craving for a new Naruto console game, some even asking for a Storm 5. Now personally, while I wouldn't necessarily object to a new entry in the Storm series, I don't think it's the best route to take from an artistic viewpoint. Storm 4 is constructed in a way to represent the end of CyberConnect 2's journey in adapting Naruto into video game form. They started off in 2003 with the PS2 titles, they took a new direction once the PS3 generation came, and now Storm 4 is the final chapter of this journey, and so much about the creative decisions present in this game is meant to reflect that. While I'm fully open to any new form of expansion packs, as far as a fully fledged game, I think we can move on from the Ultimate Ninja series. Fuck it, I wouldn't mind a 2D fighter developed by 4's, which everyone has been asking recently to the point where it's become a cliche, but I don't disagree with them. I would be joyfully excited for a project like that. The other games based on Naruto that we have right now, I'm sorry, I just can't be fucked with them. As far as modern games go, Storm 4 is probably the only Naruto game that I like, and it's nice to share some appreciation every now and then, especially if I end up convincing people to get into this series, which you absolutely should. Anyway, that's all I have to this video. See you some other time, and Merry Christmas. Goodbye.